I'd like to call this meeting to order. Is there any proposed changes to the agenda? Hearing none, who would like to move to adopt the agenda? Keith?
Sorry, Laura.
Is there any discussion? Any second? Oh, yeah, we need a second.
I'll do it.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Approve the minutes of the August 31st, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
1 second. Sarah. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstains? Okay. We'll have an update now on question and answer sheet, Lincoln, Vermont State Board of Education activity, and the revised draft work plan.
Right, and all of those are from me. And I do have a check-in on the revised draft work plan and go to action on the March 2022 anticipated deadline or not, so we can get some clarity on that, but I'll fill you in on that in just a minute. First thing I wanted to share with you by way of update is you have asked a number of questions over the first meetings, and I, to assist with clarity, compiled the questions and answers and linked that in the agenda in the resources at the end. I just have 3 hard copies because I'm trying to do better at using less paper. But if anybody would like a hard copy, want one to go that way? No? Okay. Well, hard copies are here if anybody wants them. And just wanted to reiterate answers to information, answers to questions that you've asked so far, and we can keep it updated as questions arise, and perhaps it can go on the study committee website for each district. The first question that folks had asked is the vote determined by each school district or by each town? I have communicated with, thank you, Donna Russo-Savage at the Agency of Education, and the answer is that the decision to form a new union between Madison Northwest and Mount Abraham would be a decision of those 2 districts, not the individual towns comprising those districts. And of course, both of those districts must say yes in order for a new entity to be formed. So that's the answer to that. The second part of that question is the next question on page 1. If we do vote, does the ballot count need to be commingled, or can it be counted by town and total? The answer is that the ultimate decision-making is based on the total votes of the municipalities in the member districts, but the process of counting and reporting the votes would be dependent on whatever the bylaws are or the articles of agreement for the individual existing unions. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Folks asked if there is a merger of 2 unified unions, what are the options for withdrawal? And can a school district withdraw even if it was not technically a forming district of the unified union? And the answer to that question is we don't know. It's not clear in statute, and it's similar to other questions that have been raised in other parts of the state. And it's an area where it would be extremely helpful for the legislature to add clarity to how that might play out. Yeah.
There are questions on these?
Oh, yeah, fire
Okay,
away.
so that relies on statute to determine that, but is that something that, if it was detailed in bylaws, would be, let's say, so it would be,
Oh, withdrawal?
yeah, blank,
Yeah. That's something that I think it could be worth getting a legal opinion on. There are some issues or some strategies in articles where I'm hearing different interpretations of what articles of agreement can include. I don't know, and again, I'm not an attorney, if you can agree to powers of the electorate that are not prescribed in statute to allocate to the electorate. So that's kind of a linchpin question. To that, what are the conditions for doing so? Yeah. Dave?
Thank you. So this is a perfect time because there's a regional meeting of the Association for Addison and Rutland Region. Everyone should have gotten, all school board members, I should say, should have gotten a notice and an ability to register. There aren't very many people registering. Typically, not very many people go to these. But both of our districts have some really big concerns that the legislature can, could, should, might address. And this is our opportunity to send a message to Vermont School Boards Association that is our voice inside the legislature. So I encourage everyone to register that's September 23rd. If you didn't get the email, you can send me an email and I'll forward it to you. But that's our opportunity to have our voice heard with the Vermont School Boards Association. So I encourage everyone to attend.
Thank you. Yeah, that section of statute is unclear. It doesn't answer all the questions, and legislative support would be hugely helpful. The state board can require a voluntarily formed supervisory district to become a part of a supervisory union. So for example, the supervisory districts that you are now, could they be assigned to a supervisory union? And the agency's answer to that was yes. That is a long-standing responsibility of the Vermont State Board. At the same time, the agency wanted to acknowledge the notion that education leaders, and perhaps it's reasonable to infer that the agency's recommendations to the state board and the state board itself would continue to defer to the preferred structure, which is the supervisory district structure. Yeah.
Sorry, did I hear you say we are a supervisory district?
You
I
are.
don't think we are.
You are two
We're a
supervisors.
unified district.
You are. It's a little like rectangles and squares. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. You are a unified union district, which is also a supervisory district. So your supervisory, your central office functions are embedded in the pre-K-12 school district for each of the 2 districts of Mount Abe and Addison Northwest. And those are the preferred structures. Okay. So there also was a question about whether or not a small district like Lincoln, for example, if it withdraws, could it be a supervisory district and contract for, otherwise make arrangements to provide for the services for it to be a supervisory district? And at the time I answered this, it was before the state board meeting on the 15th. And this was a foreshadowing from the Agency of Education that the secretary was contemplating recommending that another small school system that is seeking to withdraw from a unified union Ripton become its own supervisory district, at least for the time being. So it was on the agenda. It was the secretary's recommendation that that happen. So the answer is yes, that can happen. And I'll give you a little more update on the state board action in just a minute. Any questions on that one? So last question, no, it wasn't the last question. Can a supervisory union or a supervisory district refuse to allow a new school system to be assigned? And the answer is no. The state board has full authority to assign. I would say that they also are committed to hearing feedback from the systems where they're considering assigning school districts. And the feedback was honored by the state board regarding the Ripton decision. They heard from 4 supervisory unions and supervisory districts in the region and considered that in making their recommendations regarding Ripton. So they get to make the decision, but they listen to what we have to say about the impact of restructuring and reassigning supervisory unions. The last question, I can't remember who asked it, was, and I can't see her name, David, was about could a unified union structure operate with the equivalent of local boards as part of the plan. So I asked the agency if there were any rules or laws that might inform how site-based councils or site-based governance might operate in a unified union structure with multiple schools. And the answer is that none have been identified at this time. It may have been, I think it was something that the legislature discussed, the concept of site-based councils, during the time that Act 46 was crafted and even before. There are school-based council models in other states, and Vermont's Regional Advisory Board structure, which is a structure associated with tech centers and would almost be a reverse of that, where for a tech center, the Regional Advisory Board provides advisory input for the governance of the board, which is ultimately decided by the school district that's assigned that tech center. And that model might be reviewed with an eye to making sure that there's an advisory body for each school that is providing guidance and input to the officially governing body, which would be the school district. So that's the answer, the best answer I have to that question at this time. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll do my best to give a brief update on Lincoln. My understanding is that Lincoln, the other towns of Mount Abraham Union School District are beginning to work together to explore a date for a vote to determine if the individual towns approve Lincoln's withdrawal. My understanding is that November 2nd is one of the dates that's being looked at, but I would defer to any of you if there's more current information that I don't have.
I would only add that is a date that I think has been discussed.
Yeah.
Another date that has been proposed by one town was town meeting. That was the last time we were last week or week. I don't know if there's been other dates.
I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, because this relates to some of the questions that you had, that on the 15th, the Vermont State Board of Ed considered what to do with Ripton now that it has voted to withdraw. Withdrawal has been approved by the other entities in the supervisory district, and they approved a financial plan for the withdrawal. And as I alluded to earlier, the secretary's recommendation, the secretary looked at several options, assigning the new district to a multi-district supervisory union that currently exists in the region, creating a new supervisory union to provide services to Ripton, and in that case, they were looking at Addison Central, or declare that entity, Ripton, to be its own supervisory district. And the recommendation of the State Board of Education was, well, the recommendation of the secretary, and this is important, is that they recommended that Ripton be its own supervisory district, and because they anticipate that there may be other situations that are similar to that where small entities may be seeking to withdraw from a unified union, the recommendation, at least on the 15th, was that other systems also be assigned to be their own supervisory districts until, for at least a few years, so that other changes in the region can unfold and perhaps ultimately lead to some other structure, including possibly a multi-district SU in the region, something that can't be done at this time because all of the other pieces haven't fallen into place. So that's important to know. The State Board of Ed also, however, said, we really want you to consider staying in the supervisory district, and asked Ripton to follow up with Addison Central and report back to the State Board, I think in November, is my understanding. So that's important information for Lincoln, but also for this body to consider as you're thinking about the way that individual former district decision-making might impact your process. Any questions on that? We're very quiet tonight. That's all right. I did include in the resources again an updated draft work plan. And based on the work we've done so far, moved out several of the discussions of articles because they really are contingent on a preferred model, the selection of a preferred model. And I wanted to, and really that's what all the highlighted changes are, is moving existing work farther out and adding at the very end a few more items that it would be helpful. I thought it would be helpful to highlight that should be in the work plan, but don't have a specific time assigned to them yet, including things like a tax rate analysis, reviewing the educational possibilities and challenges of different governance structure models, and the impacts of a unified union for the possibly forming districts. So my request is for clear direction from you. I feel like I don't have the authority to extend a work plan beyond the goal target timeline. We talked about it being very ambitious to have a recommendation ready by town meeting 2022. And I think that was really clear to the public, but it would be very helpful for me to hear your thoughts on what a reasonable timeline is so that I feel comfortable working with the co-chairs on a more extended, more spread out work plan where we can take the time to really have the conversations about the important topics that we need to discuss.
So you've been discussing this with the co-chairs. And the co-chairs get our offer, say,
I would just say based on the work we've been doing, and, you know, the agenda, I mean, we've sort of adapted the work plan already. It doesn't seem like the work is doable before to be ready for town meeting day, because we even have to go back to warning and all of that. So it seems like the November 2022 election seems more like we can do the real work that we need to do. I sort of got that sense that everybody was kind of feeling that way, but if people weren't speak up.
Just to ask a sort of dumb question, like what is the drawback of not allowing us this extra time to really do careful, good work? Like, why would we, just because it's already there and we don't want to disappoint people, or?
Well, the work, the charge we got from the boards was, we really want you to try to do it by the March deadline. And I think there were some financial reasons for trying to get that date, and Jill and Patrick can probably speak more on that. But then we also got the sense that November 2nd, and please, if you can both speak to that, November 2nd would still be in time before the real financial crunch happens. Please.
Yeah, I mean, one proposed date aligns with budget development for FY '24, right? And the other was really postponing that. You can't develop a budget to begin following the November election next school year.
So it'd be a 2025 school year instead of a 2024 school year. And what are the financial projections of one year versus the other? That's sort of the issue.
Right, so we have those projections on our website in terms of where we expect our budget trajectory to go over that span of time. And we will be in the midst of experiencing the worst of our declining enrollment in the next years. So, you know, it will become pretty challenging to get through that time period. And that, you know, is without really understanding fully how the weighting study will be implemented, which will also negatively impact our budget.
That's really the gist of why it was the sense of urgency that I think the boards were feeling that led to the ambitious timeline, recognizing that each year that passes, there are additional financial hardships that we have to work through. So the sooner decisions made that sets a course for what the future looks like, the sooner we may have a plan to address those financial hardships that is something more than a year-to-year kind of Band-Aid. It has a longer range plan. So really, that's the difference in, and November is pretty late. It would be, this is obviously a really big decision. A November date that needs to wait 30 days to be confirmed. So now we're into early December. We're getting very late in the budget building season. It's possible, I suppose, to build parallel budgets as we anticipate trying to understand which direction this might go. But it does squeeze that timeline and the ability to react to it.
Yeah, presumably we have the proposal, again, have to have that before the warning, so it would be possible to build a parallel budget based on that proposal. Is that what costs? So it'll be work, a lot of work.
And really, a lot of what this committee will need to do is do some financial analysis along the way. So in some ways, we'll be doing some of that work as we try to understand the financial implications of the
I just point out though that if we touch it and really try to get that deadline for the benefit of the school districts, the likelihood of the merger being passed is probably lower. So by taking a really thorough approach, even though it's longer, we have more time to sell it to the communities if that's the route we go. And I'd hate to put something out there, especially being from Addison, where our first vote to withdraw was garbage. And I would hate to put something out there because it really turns a lot of people off if your work is not done well the first time. So I really, whatever we decide, we have to do a good job.
Erica?
Just a question of logistics, because if we want the vote to be on town meeting day, then we have to basically do our research and decision-making by the end of November, I think it is. So where would that date move to if we were to move the end date? Would be 3 months before November.
Yeah, I need to have the opportunity to sit down and map it out. But I think you'd be much more comfortable in relation to the requirements for warning and informational meetings and coordinating with district boards, working with the State Board of Ed, because it's not just local concerns, and they can take as long as they want, so getting an early start so that they can consider thoughtfully whatever you recommend if it's approved by the committee would be helpful. So I'd be happy to sit down and map that out. Again, I didn't want to presume to do that and take the time to do that without direction.
Just to be clear, at least in my own mind, if we defer it to November and just go through a natural process, that's a 2025, potentially, if it's approved, start date, budget year start date. If we parallel budgets, understanding there's a tremendous amount of work there, that would be a 2024 start date, if you will, which is where we're at right now.
FY24.
FY24, yeah.
24 school year. Yeah.
And that's basically what the timeline is for the tack that we're taking right now.
It's not out of the question that you can hold a special vote
Right.
at another time, but coordinating a vote across the number of towns that you need to coordinate would be a huge ask on your town clerks and pretty significant expense. So I see pros and cons to both.
It would be similar, well, yeah, I guess Lincoln, it would be similar for non-AV school district as the vote that we're trying to, Lincoln's trying to win me.
Times two.
Times 2, great.
So, I think if the question we're trying to answer and put before the voters is, are we going to have a unified district or not? That's a somewhat simpler, I don't mean to imply that it's simple, all the work we do is complicated, but it's much simpler than some of the other proposals that have been put before us. And speaking for myself, I'm intrigued by the notion of having MAUSD run their elementary schools and Edison Northwest run their elementary schools, have a unified high school. I don't know what happens to grades 6, 7, and 8. That would reduce the number of superintendents to 1, so that there would be some economies gained there. There would be some retention of local control with regard to the elementary schools. So at first blush, that intrigues me. I'm not saying that I'm sold, but I think it's, in my mind, it's worthy of investigation. And if we're going to investigate, my point being, if we're going to investigate more than just a yes or no answer on a unified union, I think that requires more time.
Yes.
I asked David if he imagines 2 superintendents or 1 superintendent in that structure.
My one.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, can I make a motion to,
Yes, you can.
formulate a new extended timeline? I don't know how to word this.
You're wording it great.
Okay, great, yeah. So, yeah, I would like to make a motion that we extend the timeline, and the new goal will be November 2022.
We have a motion on the floor to extend the deadline to November of 2023. Is there any discussion? 2022, sorry. I'm looking at 2023. We're given lots of time. Yes.
So to clarify, sort of pulling it apart like an accordion, no change in the task, just more time.
That's what I heard.
Well, it could be a change in the task if the timeline is truncated, we might not be able to do many of the tasks that we might otherwise partake in to get all the information that we need to make a decision. But maybe by task, you're meaning deciding whether or not to merge. Is that the big task?
We have a list of tasks now.
Let's go.
Yes.
So I'm voting in favor of extending the timeline, because I agree that if we don't do this right, then we're just wasting our time here. I also hear that I am then agreeing to extend my time working on this board, which I am okay with, but I think when we're thinking about all that, I think we do just have to think about the reality of what does that mean for all of us? And could we potentially throw out some ideas? You know, do we want to meet more frequently to try and speed things up, or do we want to commit to our time frame, you know, the schedule we're staying on? I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. But I do think there's a heavy lift to do in terms of the politics of it and the real just heavy thinking and input from everybody as to what's best for our communities long-term, although we're finding out that nothing's forever, as schools are pulling out. But what's best for our students, our families, our communities long-term. Does that make sense? Am I talking in circles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, all those in favor of extending the timeline to November 2022? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. coming from Virgins, I was a Commodore, I am a Commodore. I went to Virgins, I love Virgins. Mount Abe was our rival. We didn't like them. I mean, that's the elephant in the room for anybody that I talk to in the produce aisle at Shaw's, you know? That is
Absolutely.
the way it is. And I have horrible founder's syndrome. I'm doing this with an open mind, but I look at the football and the lunch program and the things that we have collaborated with Mount Abe on are wonderful, and the friendships. I went to a graduation party of a student that graduated Virgins who played football, and all these Mount Abe kids were there. That didn't happen when I was in school. So I think the continuation, my addition would be, while we are studying, I would also like to see how much more we can collaborate with Mount Abe to create a less rival. If that makes sense.
I think one of the things I think about is sort of, when you have disparate groups come together, we're a lot, Jen's, Sunny, we're a lot similar, but we're also different in what, and all the towns are unique. And I think, to me, it's important as people come together that we also celebrate the differences and not try to, like some schools that have, different programmings or different, I think of it similar to, when people come from different cultures, right? You want them to assimilate to be Americans, but you also want to enjoy the culture that they bring that's different. I think that's true in our communities, even though we're not as disparate as many groups, that we still retain the uniqueness that not only each student brings, but also the larger communities bring.
Can I add a little about the elephant? Because in my comparing religious class, in both Buddhism and Islam, people have a story, a parable about it, the elephant that you all may have heard about, the blind men who are all touching a different part of the elephant. And then when they're asked to describe an elephant, their descriptions are radically different, right? And I feel like that's a lot what's going on here. That's a really good metaphor for this. So, I have to say, after our last meeting, I was thinking about this exercise. And one thing that, concern that I have that didn't kind of bubble up at the time, is that there's been a lot of really high turnover with the teachers in our district. And I feel like that there's all sorts of reasons why people retire or leave and go elsewhere or move for other reasons, but I feel like continuity with the teachers is really valuable from a pedagogy perspective. And I feel like if we're going to go through this upheaval, there needs to be a very conscious effort to connect with the teachers and include them so they don't feel alienated by processes that are being imposed on. We have a teacher here, at least one, I don't know if others of you are also a teacher, and that's a good start. But for me, I just want, like, the kids obviously are the center of our concern, but the teachers cannot be left out. I feel very strongly about that.
Well, background for me, I went to school here in this district. Ed actually taught me math in 7th grade, true fact. And now I teach at Virgins. So this is really exciting for me to be sitting here discussing this. I think what I want to talk about is that I think student-teacher relationships are highly important and are what really make a difference in a student's life. At Virgins, we have a great morning meeting model. Every morning we meet for 20 minutes, and I think that that's at the heart of everything we do at Virgins High School, and that connection for 4 years with our students. We talk about academics, it's an emotional connection, a social connection with our students, and all of that plays into the success of our students. And so I think that that's something that we really have to think about and make sure that that's at the heart of our teaching and learning.
I am going to tell a story that starts when I first came here to teach in 1988. I was fortunate enough to be put on a middle school team. The middle school model was relatively new at that time, and MAUSD was a leader in making that work. Teams, TAs, block schedules, all kinds of enrichments, and it worked. And I try to keep track a little bit of how it's ebbed and flowed over the years, but it is, I believe, a way for teachers to build and maintain good relationships with the students. 10 years later, I was on a task force called, which ultimately produced the High Schools on the Move document, out of which came, I think it's fair to say, Act 77. The idea being that there are 12 principles around which high schools of the state would maintain and build their organization, their structures, so that graduating seniors were ready for the workforce of college. That's another piece of work that I worked very hard here for my last 10 years to sustain, and I'd like to see that continue or be reinforced in the future.
I'll pass. Bring it over to Sarah.
I guess I have an addition. I worry for I don't know, I guess this is for how we can improve. And I don't know that it's a school community partnership, maybe it's a cost, it might be learning student, might be all the things. But as budgets get stripped down and opportunities decrease, especially at the secondary level, I worry that after our housing discussion, I worry that that is a much bigger deterrent than what the individual elementary schools provide as far as bringing people in to live here. And that is my elephant in the room, that I think it's something we, as a community, while it's not that we're not proud of our high schools, but we need to find a way to showcase, and it might not happen the paths that we're currently going down.
I feel like my comment is kind of tying a bunch of things together. So I've been substituting all around our district, and I've seen just this year there were some, I think, teacher positions for electives that couldn't get filled, and there's a lot of kids in PE because of it, and they're not okay. Like they don't want to be there, and we've just been through a pandemic, and the teachers that have to deal with them are not okay. And then we have the merger, so I just feel like we need to really make sure we're supporting the teachers the students, like, there's so much support that we need to come up with in the next year, regardless of what decision we are gonna come to, because we can't educate these kids if they don't want to be there.
So one of the things that I said last time was how proud I am in our alternative education paths, the Wayfinders, Walden, and the Career Center. But one thing that really jumps out at me on this list is how in the budgets, it always comes up that should we cut AP classes? Are we cutting languages? So we're really catering to the kids who don't do a great job in traditional education, but are we doing so potentially at the expense of the kids who do want to go on to college? And to make sure that we really need to focus on having a comprehensive preparatory environment for all kids, no matter where they're going to go. Because there is, I don't like to see that disparity growing because we're trying to support the kids most in need. We have to support everybody, so that kind of jumped out.
Everything on this list rings true, and I boiled it down to a few things. I think I grew up in small towns in Vermont, and I understand what you're saying about the uniqueness of the towns, but I also think in many ways you could slap any town name on any other town in Vermont, and they're all at the essence. We have a lot of shared values about what a Vermont work ethic is, and I have to say I have 3 boys who are now out of here, and they're very successful in their post-secondary education. And that's from the communities as much as it is from, and their teachers are part of their community, and we're all part of their community. So I agree with everything you said, and I had the opportunity to coach all the boys basically who just graduated off that Virgin soccer team last year in Addison United many years ago, and they were all my guys, right? It didn't matter what town they were from. So I sort of thought about, like, what is it that we all really want? And I think about the students in my own class where I teach. And I think students and parents really want the following. They want a safe place for their students emotionally and physically. They want their students to be challenged appropriately, like you just said, like every learner. They want their students to be valued and then want them to be proud of the work they do, proud of the buildings they're in, proud of the community they live in. And then ultimately, kids want to be successful. And that success is not going to look the same for every kid, and that's why I was shaking a little bit about the class rank competition thing. Like, we have to understand that everybody's success looks different, and that's part of our responsibility. And I think the way we can achieve those things, because parents want the same thing as the kids. Every parent, every grandparent, everybody in the community also wants those things for the people in our community and those students. And I think the way we can do it is with the humans we hire and retain, with how we choose to spend their time and our time. What does their school day look like and why? What are we asking them to do? And how do we choose to spend our dollars collectively at the large level, and then literally down at the minutia of what's in front of them day to day. I don't have answers for any of that, but I think that's why we're here, is to answer some of those questions so that we can get to those outcomes.
I think we've done such amazing work in both of our districts. But I think that one thing that comes to mind for me is a clarification. In the past 10 years, I think that both districts have made amazing progress with curriculum and programming to really be able to reach every single student. And since becoming unified districts and developing more unified curriculums, which were a requirement of Act 77, like, we're finally at that place where we really have consistency among the 5 different elementary schools. And that consistency is now coming to the high school. And it's like we're really starting to dig in and see huge, or what I feel is good progress. And I'm just concerned that based on what happens with this decision, that we may go backwards. So we've come so far, and it's hard to think about going backwards.
And it's hard for teachers as well to think about, you know, we've made this progress and now things are gonna change, and going backwards just is one more layer of, it's been really tough the past few years, and it's just, you know, this stuff keeps adding and adding, and, you know, it really is affecting morale. So those are some of my thoughts.
So I had the privilege of doing my student teaching here at MAUSD a while ago, and now I have kids in the Virgins district, so I have a deep love for both of these communities. I think whatever product does or does not come out of this merger study, that I think there's a tendency, or what I've seen in the last few years, there's a tendency when there's talks of merging communities, that there's a concern amongst the community that the quality of what they're now receiving will somehow be lesser for having joined together, that something someone really loves about their school will be diminished or tarnished as a result of having to make something new out of that. And I guess I don't share that concern with this merger study, because I know both communities to some degree, and I know, not to retread too much here, but these schools are filled with teachers that, you know, deeply care about their students, with parents and grandparents that all ultimately want the same thing for their students. Whatever comes out of this, I think will be strong, because the starting pieces are fairly strong. So as far as I see it, all that we can gain out of this is potentially more opportunities. I have a concern that there are, well, with teachers and good relationships are the basis of good education for our students. There are doors that are closing as a result of our budget woes. Like Carol was saying, some of the higher end stuff tends to be, I don't want to say higher end, but like the academically rigorous things like AP courses, things that do draw people to our communities often get sliced out of the curriculum when there are budget shortfalls. And I'm ultimately concerned that will just sort of exacerbate this problem and keep that snowball, push it down the hill at a faster speed. People, you know, our population woes will only become worse as people are not drawn to our communities, because, you know, maybe they're afraid that our curriculum is not as rigorous as they'd like it to be. So I think ultimately, if there can be some benefits in terms of just offerings, I think that would be a great outcome for this committee. Because again, no matter what the product is, it's going to be a strong community. It's going to be a strong joint community. I don't think anyone will find anything tarnished. I see only chances to maybe reopen some doors that have closed. Maybe open some doors that weren't open at all.
Thank you. First, I'm just being close to the end of this circle. I have to say, I am so impressed with the things that I've heard from the people here. If any group of people can figure this out, they're sitting at the table right now, and I'm impressed with that. One thing I'd like to clarify is I made the comment on here, lack of PK provider/options. Maybe others also made a similar comment. My perspective is that the design that the legislature and has sort of organically grown in our state of pre-K has actually increased the inequity of kids when they're entering kindergarten, making the task of our elementary school teachers even more difficult to try to bring everyone up to speed, so to speak. And so it's the lack of equity or the increase in inequity in pre-K that concerns me. And I wanted to add something on the plus side, over the years, what I've seen with student involvement in community social issues, the students at Mount Abe have been remarkable in their ability to get out front of some issues. A number of years ago, pellet stoves, kids got involved in that, and more recently, the Black Lives Matters issues. So, you know, I think that's a plus side of how our students are willing to and get involved in community issues.
So I looked at this list, and it's impressive as it is, and people are building on it. And I struggled with adding anything to it, maybe it's because I'm not that innovative. But one thing I decided to kind of highlight, even though it's been discussed before the elephant got over here, is the collaboration to provide opportunities across schools. And being on the Mount Abe board, obviously, the discussions we've had through the process of bringing the 5 elementary schools together to align curriculum. When schools were operating independently, there was examples of a lot of different focus for different activities, subjects, if you will, which ends up providing a variety of preparedness to go to a common school, high school, Mount Abe, junior high, high school, Mount Abe, that has to be sort of calibrated, if you will, at that level. And the efforts in curriculum that our district has been working on to align the experiences at the elementary schools to go into the high school, so kids just go to the next grade as opposed to experiencing something that they might be bored with because it's been covered or they need to catch up with. It's been important. I think it really made the whole Act 46 activity, at least on that Abe, click as to why that is important, at least from my perspective. I'm concerned about that. I'm not necessarily a supporter or a protagonist about the Lincoln succession, however that may go, or the Ripton one for that matter, where the school strikes off at the elementary level and does its own thing, and it may be a great educational experience for the kids for that particular point in their lives, but when they turn into a school, whether they go to Middlebury, to Jans, Mount Abe, CVU, wherever they go, there's that risk of calibration, if you will, as they step into a totally different world. I think as we go through this process, we can't forget that we want to have, whatever the structure is we come up with, we want to have a feeder system, which is kind of a cold way to say it, but we want those elementary schools to be aligned so that students from them, as best as they can, will be all as even as they can be to continue in their junior high path and high school paths, and not end up where Mount Abe district was when it was separate schools.
I believe Brad is with us.
Again, sorry, I could not make the meeting in person tonight. I have too many family commitments in one day. It's hard to add much to what all of the wisdom that has been sort of stated around the table. I would think that, you know, one of the main issues that important, at least from where I stand, is is not to lose sight of the sort of the critical need for effective community input, into the the schools and community engagement with the schools. One of the things that I've been frustrated by over the last few years of working with the schools has been that we haven't done a great job in getting community involvement. I'm not sure how to fix that, because I know that a lot of people have put a lot of time and energy into doing it, but my sense is we haven't been very effective. So I would hope that as we move forward, coming to whatever decision we might come to, that we not lose sight of the of taking or considering and taking steps that would encourage greater community involvement in our schools.
Not sure if this is something to add or something to clarify, but something I've been thinking about a lot is just the idea of needing a certain critical mass to be able to have certain opportunities for our students. For example, if you had a larger population in a high school, would you be able to have a larger band? Maybe have an orchestra as well as a band. Maybe have more than 2 or 3 foreign languages offered, or AP courses. Or at the elementary level, might you be able to offer them, might they be able to start in a foreign language younger, in 4th or 5th grade, rather than waiting till their 8th or 9th grade, as they currently do. So I was just wondering, because I think a lot of these conversations about, buildings and merging districts is I think it's because of, declining enrollment and financial hardships and lacking a certain critical mass, if you will. So I'm wondering what research may be out there possibly for us to reference of okay, if you have a school that's this certain size at this cost, you might be able to offer this. But if you're this size, it's going to be hard for you to offer this much, because I think it's a very relevant thing to the work we're doing and the problems we're struggling with. And it's something I, obviously thinking about a lot. It's like that idea of a critical mass, and with what student enrollment, what would be ideal at a cost-effective way to really meet all of our students' needs and offer an attractive menu of offerings, both academically and extracurricularly. That's all. Thank you.
My comment, it follows up on the first part of your comment quite well. Segue. The community engagement piece. When we were answering these questions in our circles, one thing that really struck me was this would be a great activity to open publicly. And I can't remember what the program Sheila talked about a few meetings ago was, where you could rank different opinions. But it would be fantastic if we asked questions to the public to get some input early on, and just the engagement and allowing them to feel heard and allow their opinions to be spoken really will help us in our mission to bring them in earlier, to get those opinions as early as possible.
But I just did kind of feel like, it's important that these are public meetings, and we should let the public know that they're happening. And so I believe that when I post in Ferrisburg, I can share it with Virgins and then some other communities which don't make sense. They don't align with the districts. Not that they don't make sense, but it's, they don't line up with the district, like Charlotte and, Moncton, is Moncton part of your? Yeah, so Moncton is one of them. Charlotte is one of them. I can't remember the other ones, maybe Heinsberg. So I'm not really sure who's seeing it, is the upshot, and how useful that is. But I'm happy to continue to do that and just make sure that it gets on the calendar for, for Jens and Ferrisburg in the future, if that is a useful task for me to do.
I would post that for MAUSD. Would you forward me what you compose, and I'll just post that?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That would make my life easier.
Yeah.
So does that take care of all of the communities, or are there some that?
I'm pretty sure I can do all 5 towns.
You share on Amazon.
I think Dave can do all 5 towns here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all 5, yeah, are, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Who has their own?
Well, all our towns do, but
Yeah,
right.
I could
but
see.
some of them, they share on us, right?
There's, I've heard the New Haven one, and there's very rarely things shared from Bristol, but it happens occasionally.
Okay, I have New Haven.
So Erica, I could see yours, and Addison, Waltham, Canton, and Virgin share one, so that's our 5 towns out there.
And I can also share with Moncton and New Haven.
If you do that and share it with Dave,
Yeah.
we're covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I've signed up to do all 5 towns in our district.
Oh,
That's Starksboro, Moncton, Linden, Bristol, and Newton.
okay, so I'll just do mine,
So just
and I'll forward it to you.
purity and clarity sake of the committee, take action to authorize Erica and Dave as your front porch forum posters of agendas, calendar links, and committee briefs.
Does that require a motion?
You should, since your communication designees are your co-chairs, it would be cleaner.
I make a motion that we anoint Erica and Dave as our front porch forum information providers moving forward as they see fit.
Perfect, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to appoint Erica and Dave as our front porch forum information providers. Is there any discussion?
Bravo.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right, another task that I thought might be helpful to you. You had a very good discussion at the last meeting, a beginning discussion about the regional planning process and housing, what housing was looking like prospectively in the future. And I linked in the resources to the agenda the updated work on the planning commission that Kevin has been a part of, as well as, for those who don't like the many-page version, a PDF of a recent story in the Addison Independent, which said the same things in a more succinct way. I was wondering if Kevin would, and committee members would agree to have Kevin really distill this down into a paragraph or two that he could share with the committee, and that might be part of a report and a brief review with the full committee, just to highlight really clearly in this context what the housing future looks like, and help you to think about what that might mean for education and planning for the next couple of decades.
Is that study for all of our region, or how big is that region?
Addison County.
Yeah,
Addison
so
County?
just a point of clarification, I'm on the Bristol Planning
sorry.
Commission instead of the Addison County. But the Addison County Regional Planning Commission is for the county.
Okay.
And if you look at
there's excellent data in there that pertains to the point towns as well as other towns that here. Sort of. And I'm certainly open to adding this.
So Kevin is willing. Is there any objection to him doing that and updating us at a future meeting?
Thank you, Kevin.
One of the questions that came last time also was, what impact has the mergers under Act 46 had, or what were the outcomes of that? If the committee is interested in reviewing that, I reviewed the two studies and articles of agreement for the formation of Mount Abe and Madison Northwest, and I pulled out all of the phrases that represented something that was a possible accomplishment as an outcome of the formation of the union. Some of them are really concrete, like we can save between, $40,000 and $70,000 in year one. Some of them are more abstract. We can expand opportunities for district-wide professional development for teachers. Some of the things we talked about earlier about areas of improvement around improving outcomes, or not outcomes, but aligning curriculum so that students come to middle school having had equitable learning opportunities and with similar readiness for moving forward. So I have two tables that summarize that. If you think that's useful information to check back on, I'm wondering if there might be two people, one to work on Addison Northwest and one on Mount Abe, and maybe it's just a matter of interviewing the superintendent to say, did we accomplish this? Did we not accomplish it? Is it in progress? And what's the evidence we have? And there might be a few areas where they have to reach out to others to get the information, but I've got the table worked up, and I can give someone a format to do some recon in that area and bring that information back to the committee if you think that would be helpful.
Good night.
Would you like to do one entity or the other?
Night.
Okay. Is there a taker for Bridget? Yay! Thanks. So any objection to Ed and Keith doing some Act 46 implication recon for us?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. Last thing, it came up, and the admin team and myself knew this was coming and was information that you were going to need, but I wanted to be super transparent in the context of a committee meeting that I am working with the two superintendents on an updated enrollment resource that maybe synthesizes the enrollment history and future projections for all of the entities in one place, because we've got it in several places, but it would be nice to have one cohesive snapshot. And they have begun looking at tax rate projections for the future and just for the current district so that we have a baseline to compare it to. So that work is underway, and we can bring that back to the committee for review and discussion at a future meeting as well. Sound okay? All right.
Yes, thank you.
Super. Turn it back to you.
Okay, all right. Now we need to do communication key points, which is that something to post on Front Porch Forum or?
The brief?
The brief, yeah, okay. So what would we want on the communication key points? Right?
We moved our end date to a later time to allow us to do a more thorough job. You can wordsmith that much better.
Lori, yeah. Yes.
There's actually a document that has like, I don't want to say if it's FAQ, but it's questions that have come up and proper answers to them that you could link, I guess, or say we can, where it can be found.
That we continue to refine and discuss values and goals for the process and for our districts.
I missed that.
Just that we continue to clarify and discuss the values and goals that we're considering in the process.
We made a decision about how to communicate with the community through Front Porch Forum.
Yep.
I'd just like to add that we should be clear that that's not our only plan for communicating with Mars. That's not adequate. First step. First step, yeah.
This isn't on our brief thing, but are we able to bring this communication key points back to our next school board meetings? Can we attach that into our agendas? If we both did that, I think that would be helpful. Am I right?
Have to update the money and the, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, at ours, we have to, I'm looking at Patrick right now in case he's not seeing me. I believe we need to have either something that gets to our board in advance that's written, or we have to say it at the meeting. So I would like to be able to attach it to our board minutes. Is that a process we can do? Or,
Yeah, I think
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we'll want to talk with Don. There's an
Okay.
interest in having a routine update.
Routine update,
From
that's
this
the word.
group. And the talk was, there's already a communication that comes from this group, so we would utilize that same communication as the update. And we just have to formalize that process.
For that purpose, just
Right,
for that
right.
purpose.
Sorry.
Or one of the
No, it's great.
one of the purposes. I'd like to see us link the housing data as well, just, I think that's important information to public to have access.
Maybe when it's posted on Front Porch Forum, we could say links are in the agenda or something, so people will know to go to the, or at the bottom of the agenda to click on the links for some of the information. Just a thought.
They're also on the Addison Northwest Merger Study Committee
Webpage,
under
yes,
the
yes.
Merger Study Committee resources, so I just need to add things to that folder.
Yep.
So just reference.
No, I think that's a good policy at Front Porch Forum. I don't know how many people read, 4 paragraphs in Front Porch Forum. Better to put it in one paragraph and then put some links in there. For those people, it's like putting the headlines. You want the details, click on this link. And go.
Anything else to add that you think is important?
mention that we continue the restorative circles, open and honest conversations about topics.
And move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. All